Hello. To give you an understanding of the PACS network architecture, I'm going to assemble and connect a PACS. Since this is about networking, I'm only going to show the network connections. Consequently, this is not intended to be a tutorial on assembling and connecting PACS components, just a way to show you the network architecture. Every hospital has its own design, and this represents the PACS system at Hack General Hospital. While this specific design may or may not exist in the real world, the basic principles remain the same. So the starting point is a network switch in the data center. The switch gives us hospital network access. The switch is mounted in a rack and it has a bunch of ports. So it looks like this picture, and it's in the hospital data center, wherever that may be, or whatever building houses the data center. This is what a switch looks like in a real data center. It's not that pretty switch I showed you in the last slide. It's got all these cables plugged into the back of it, and it's usually hard to tell what those cables are. You can kind of see here that they've put little labels around the cables to help figure out what they are. So the first thing I'm going to connect to the switch is the PACS database server. It's the brains of the PACS. We need the database server as the core component, so I would connect that to my network switch first. Now I need to connect the NAS, so I have a place to store images short term. So that's the first part of my storage system, is the NAS. I'll connect that to the switch. The database will pick up and realize that there's a NAS available. Next comes the archive, so I have long-term storage. So now I have my warehouse, if you will, that's going to store all the images coming into my PACS system. So now I have a database server. I've told the database server to look for the NAS. I've told the database server to look for the archive, so it's all connected on the same switch. So now I have my warehouse to hold my images. Next, I'm going to want to add the F5 and the DICOM servers. This is where the network architecture starts to be a custom design. Remember, F5 is an optional component in most PACS. So the gateway in to my system is going to be the F5 and the DICOM servers. That's how the modalities will bring in the images, and those images will get stored in the NAS and the archive, and the PACS database server will keep track of all the images coming in and where they're being stored. Now I need to get images out, so the last things I want to connect in the data center are the IMS and the web server. So now the images that come in, right, so the images will come in through the F5 and the DICOM server. The PACS database server will decide where they go on the NAS and where they're stored in the archive, so then they can go out through the IMS and the web server. So now I have my basic core components of my PACS set up. Okay, so quick reality check. All these servers are in a single rack in the data center, and they're all plugged into a single switch, preferably at the top of the rack. And it should look something like this. If you were from in the back of the rack in the data center, you should be able to see these different servers, and they're all plugged into the switch up top. You can kind of see the cables coming in up here. There's the switch up top. You have all these servers. These would be the redundant database servers down here. You can see the cables. I can't remember what those cables are called. All of a sudden, the cluster cables that make that a clustered database, so that these all talk to each other. Now, that's what it should look like. It should not look like this. If your data center rack looks like this, you're doing it wrong. That is a mess. It's junky. I couldn't keep track of that. That's terrible. Now, I need some system connections. Now we need to connect the interfaces. Once PACS is connected to the network in the data center, it should be easy to contact other system servers on the network, such as RIS and Voice Recognition servers. The hard part is getting the interface connections exactly correct so they communicate on the correct name, port, IP address. So now that our PACS is here, it can be connected to the interface engine. Once it's connected to the interface engine, then it can talk to the RIS and the voice recognition system. Okay, now come the modalities. Now that all the PACS core components are on the network in the data center, I can start to think about connecting the modalities. The modalities will connect to the local switch in the nearest network operations closet. which will then connect to the switch in the data center. So wherever the radiology department is, it's probably not located right next door to the IT department where the data center is. It may be across the building. It may be across the campus. It may be in a different building. But there'll be physical cables running all the way from wherever radiology is to the data center where the PACS is. So here are all the modalities in the radiology department, and they're connected to the radiology switch in the radiology network operations closet, and that is connected by a trunk cable to the data center switch. So here's the radiology department switch, and it has the X-ray, the MRI, the nuclear, the CT, the mammo, the ultrasound, the bone densitors all connected to this, and there's a long cable or bundle of cables that goes to the PACS data center switch where you see all the things I have already connected to that. So now a CT would start here, it would go to the radiology department switch, it would then travel down the trunk cables to the PACS data center switch into the F5, the DICOM, the NAS. That's how that would all be connected. So, trunk cables. These are large cable bundles that run between the NOCs and the data center, usually in the ceiling space above the ceiling tiles. So, if I was to pull down the ceiling tiles on campus, you would see something that looks like this. All these blue cables. Try to imagine them running along the ceiling. This picture is sort of an optical illusion. This is actually top to bottom. But if you could just imagine this running along the ceiling, that's what it would look like. And then run down the sides of the NOC and connect to the switches. So this is actually the top, this is the bottom, this runs vertically. And you see the cables branch off and they go to different switches in a network operations closet. So, other modality locations, modalities located in other locations outside the radiology department, such as the emergency room, the operating room, and portables, will connect from those NOCs to a data center switch. These switches may connect directly to the PACS switch, or they may route through a master switch, and this will be determined by the organization's network engineer. So inside the green box, you have all the switches in the data center, the emergency room data center switch, the operating room data center switch, right? And those connect to the PACS data center switch. So you have the ER-CR unit here, and it's plugged into the emergency room NOC, or network operations closet, and it uses those trunk cables to connect to the ER data center switch, which in turn connects to the PACS data center switch. And here you have the C-arm, which connects to the OR NOC, which connects to the OR data center switch, which connects to the PACS data center switch. So imagine if you can't send images from the C-arm, just to check the network, you've got to check the connection from the C-arm to the NOC. You've got to check the OR NOC to the OR data center switch, and then the OR data switch has to talk to the PACS data center switch. So just to get an image from here to there, it has to travel over several network points that can and sometimes do fail. Okay, this is getting a little long, so I'm going to stop here and finish up the rest of these slides and lecture as a separate screencast so that you don't fall fully asleep and fall off your chair and hit your head, because that would be bad. Thank you.